All right, today we're going to do a deal dissection. All of my favorite YouTube videos, podcasts, well, content in general regarding real estate is when people actually break down deals they're doing and how they're doing it. And so that's what I'm doing here. Point being, you can take the overarching kind of morals, the kind of blueprint I'm trying to create here, and apply it in your own business. And so those main points that we're going to talk about are the asset, direct mail, they're in marketing in general, skilled salespeople, seller financing, and making offers with no risk or as close to no risk as possible. So let's start with number one, the asset. This is 40 acres, old manufactured home on it. There was a well, septic, and power stubbed along with the transformer to the home. Power was actually still on. And this is not land that I want to live on. This is very rural eastern Colorado. Not a lot going on out here. Very deserty and windy, but there's huge demand for this. Lots of people want a quiet piece of property with no restrictions that they can commute to town from. And I'm seeing this trend all over the country, not just in Colorado, down in the Carolinas and Florida. There's a 35-acre piece in Florida, way in the middle of nowhere. I am selling, and the guy is selling his beach house. He's like, I want to get away from hurricanes. I want to get away from people. I'll buy it, right? So this is a trend that's consistent. And so not thinking necessarily about what you want, but what do buyers, what do the market want? And not just that, but what does the market want that other people aren't fulfilling? You know, I'm here in San Diego. Obviously, lots of people want nice houses on the ocean, right? That's an obvious one. So there's lots of competition. Whereas this is a little bit further out, a little bit less obvious. And so it's a bit easier to go buy and get these deals than it is, trying to go to nice mountain communities, right? Where everybody knows that that's in demand. And you find this out by talking to locals and doing business somewhere consistently, and you kind of get a feel for some of the demand that's not being met, right? So no, I don't want to live here, but who cares? Lots of people do. So that's the first point I wanted to make. Couple quick photos. There's the old manufactured home, the electric meter and transformer with the pole stub to it. Um, as unexciting as this looks, this is very valuable. Drilling a well at 6,000 feet is expensive, so having this there is important. And then one more photo. Looking up the street, it is county maintained, so the county maintains the road, there's power, and it was fenced. So, all that to say, it's not raw land, it has improvements. And again, talking to realtors, talking to buyers, having done business here, I know that is extremely valuable. It's much easier to sell these properties with improvements than just the raw land. And this actually is raw land out here mostly. So that's the asset, and that's the first point. Don't worry about what you like or what you want to live on. What is the demand? Okay? Now, let's talk about how we got this lead. We got it via direct to seller marketing. This exact mailer, it's all Colorado branded. My company's Colorado branded. This is a photo I took, which we talk about on the back of the postcard. And it's very focused on legitimacy, being local, and knowing what we're doing, essentially. And that has been working very, very well. We took a lot of time to redo all of our mail. Maybe you're mailing somewhere or calling somewhere that you're not local to. That's fine. So are we. You can still make nice mailers that focus on legitimacy, knowledge of the asset of the area, and ability to actually close. Those are the focus points that are really helping. And also mentioning probate and being able to help with title issues has helped us a lot as well. So this is the mailer we used. And on the back end of this, we have done a lot to work on our online presence. So we have lots of five-star Google reviews, Better Business Bureau, Trustpilot. We have pictures of houses we're building on Facebook, pictures of deals we're doing, descriptions of helping sellers with liens. And that back end is making our mailers far more productive because everybody Googles you when they get these. And it just builds legitimacy in the seller's mind. So, this is the mailer we used, and straying away from those generic land offer letters or generic mailers that focus on, urgency to sell. I have dealt with almost zero sellers that are urgently needing to sell their land way off in the middle of nowhere, hours from where they live. We've done hundreds and hundreds of deals, and distress is almost never the reason that people sell. So our marketing was aligned to the seller avatar. From there, let's talk about the underwriting and how to make offers where there's no downside, at least to the degree that that is ever quantifiable. Now, we offered 35. I know that she started high and then came back, I think, at 38 eventually, and we got her down to 36,500. Now, in hindsight, this was a phenomenal deal, but she wanted to just sell. She didn't need to, but she goes, "Look, I don't want to deal with it. If I'm going to sell to you directly, I don't want due diligence. I don't want you testing the well. I don't want to wait for all these different tests and inspections and so on and so forth." So there was a potential outcome where we tested the well and it could have been dry or non-potable, infected with bacteria, which is expensive to fix. We could have found the same with the septic. We could have found issues with the electric. The manufactured home could have been useless and been more a detractor than a value add that just need removed. So we needed to make an offer where if all that was true, we still wouldn't lose money. Because if all that was true, this probably only would have sold in the 40s, right? Maybe 50, because there's a lot of money needing spent to pull a manufactured home off to, cover up and redo the well or fix the well, so on and so forth. So that's why this was a number we were comfortable with, where knowing the cost of the land, knowing the cost to drill a well, there was really no downside, right? There's got to at least be a scenario where we get our money out. And so, being that she didn't want us to do a bunch of inspections, this was the highest we were willing to go. So 36,500 with closing costs and everything, 37,480 and 80 cents is what we paid. All right, so that's how we thought about the number. Talking to our realtor, looking at comps, we thought this was a no-lose scenario with the value of the land, minus potentially the cost to remove a manufactured home and redo the well and so on and so forth. So this number made sense. So we got into escrow. Long story short, we went back and forth with our realtor, and he goes, "You know what? Let's just start really high. I have a feeling somebody's going to be really excited about this. And if the well test's okay and the roof's not leaking on the manufactured home, we might be able to sell this really high." So I said, "Great." We listed it at 90 and we got a lot of interest right away. And we went under contract at 90 with a test of the well, it being contingent on testing the well and inspecting the manufactured home. Well, good news, well test came back just fine. However, the sellers did the inspection of the manufactured home and they said, this is going to cost too much to repair. We don't have enough additional money. We're backing out. So they backed out, back on the market. We went. But I thought there was a lot of demand. Let's just leave it at 90. My realtor calls me, goes, "Look, there's a lot of people who will buy this now as is, but they need seller financing." Now, for the record, and we'll come back to this, I had financed this with an investor. So that was a hurdle. I said, "Okay, if someone will put down, 40 or 50%, I'll consider that." Long story short, I found a buyer on Facebook, had my realtor tour him through. The guy offered full price, but 40K down, 50K finance, 10% interest over 5 years. He did his inspections. He had his buddy come out, actually, who was in the manufactured housing business, looked at everything, so he knew what he was getting into and decided, okay, I want to buy it. So we went under contract. This guy actually closed with the terms I just stated. Now, with the realtor and my acquisition manager and my investor, there was more money having to be brought to the table in order to close and cash my investor out. And we're going to talk about how you could do this if you had no money to do this. But to finalize, 37,480 went into it. 90K sale price, but 50K then on a note. So 35,71604 is what came out of it. And so to pay my investor, who I owed $2,280 to for using his money for 45 days or whatever it was, then I had to pay my acquisition manager, who was actually in bonus for the month because he'd closed so much. So he got $6,247. And then, of course, paid the realtor. I found the buyer, so he didn't try and double end it. This was fair in my mind because he still toured him and did a lot of work on it. Closing costs, it's in Colorado, so I had paid for a hold open on the front end. If you're in Colorado, always get a hold open policy. So title on the back end was very, very cheap. So 35,716.04, I had to bring $10,291 to close this deal. Now, that doesn't sound very exciting, but I have a $50,000 note at 10% interest over 5 years on a valuable asset where the buyer put $40,000 down. That is a very secure note, 40 some percent down or whatever that comes out to. Yeah, 40 some percent. A lot of people would buy that note. So if you don't have any money, if you couldn't come to the table with that money down to cash out your investor and pay your acquisition manager, etc., well, you can line this up where you just have a note buyer buy this from you. I got a quote for 43,500 and 42,500 from different note buyers who would buy this note from me for that amount. And with that amount, let's call it the 42,500. Well, if you subtract the 10,291 out of pocket, that leaves you with, just over $32,000 of profit still. So you can do these deals even if you don't have any of your own money if you line things up properly. And so this one just closed. I have a nice note on my books. If something goes wrong and I need liquidity, I could always sell the note. But for now, it's $1,000 over, 60 months. And I think this guy's going to pay it off sooner. But if he doesn't, if he actually pays all 60 payments, it would be 63,741 and 13 cents, 13,741 and 13 cents of interest, and $1,062.35 a month. You don't need to do many of these deals a year to have a really nice business. So what are the points? Well, the points are, to summarize, you gotta align your marketing with your seller avatar. Take time to make nice mailers, however that looks for you. If you can brand locally, absolutely do so. Along with that, when you're targeting places and land to mail, don't think too much about what you want. Think about what the market wants and maybe isn't getting, maybe is underserved. And this is a good example of that. Make offers where you have no downside, at least to the best of your ability to calculate that. Obviously, it's not a perfect science, but I kind of walked you all through how I did it on this one and think through that lens when you're making offers. From there, you need to offer what buyers can pay. And what I mean is, I'm doing a lot of deals out here, and I am just prepared to offer seller financing on the vast majority of them. When I'm selling infill lots where builders are building, different story. They usually pay with cash. They don't want financing most of the time. But if you're dealing with this kind of land or you're dealing with something really rural, that 35 acres I referenced in Florida, I'm financing a big portion of that. You need to know ahead of time what your buyer pool can pay, and you need to be prepared to offer that. Because if I tried to sell this for cash, I mentioned that first buyer that pulled out, I don't think this would be sold yet. I'd probably have to sell it lower, very likely, right? So you need to determine that ahead of time, and you can find that pretty quickly by looking on market, talking to local realtors. And then, finally, one thing I didn't hit on is just you need to be able to speak confidently when you're negotiating with these people. You need to know your market, know the asset, understand the challenges that potentially can come with it, right? My salesperson that negotiated this could speak to, well, potential problems with the well, costs associated with that, costs associated with removing the manufactured home, right? So whatever your asset is, whether it's infill lots in the southeast or hunting land in Missouri or rural, but still for housing, lots like this, you got to know your product. And again, doing deals is the best way to do that. But when you're new, just talking to locals, reading Zillow listings, you can find this stuff out quickly. So, anyways, guys, that was a bit long, but I hope it was useful. This is a real deal that I just closed and will essentially net me 50 some in profit over a few years. Let me know if this was useful or what you think.